the first pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Jacksonville Jaguars select Trevor Lawrence. The New York Jets select Zach Wilson, Trey Lance,
Justin Fields, Mac Jones.
News here on NFL Total Access. The 49ers have now found a trade partner.
Mac Jones traded to the Jaguars for a 6th-round pick.
Now to the NFL, where the Justin Fields era in Chicago is ending after just 3 seasons.
We've got breaking news from the NFL, where Zach Wilson has been traded to the Denver Broncos.
The year was 2021. 1 year into the COVID era, the Bucks had stomped out the Chiefs. LeBron had just won the bubble ring, albeit that was 2020. And there was a once-in-a-generation quarterback declaring for the NFL draft. Although he was the can't-miss prospect, 4 other quarterbacks heard their name called on night 1. Unfortunately, other than the number 1 overall pick, Trevor Lawrence, every single quarterback selected in round 1 are not only on another team, but are not projected to even start on this new team. Today, we will briefly analyze what went wrong with these first-round quarterbacks, and we will try to determine if this was the worst quarterback class of all time. But we'll begin at number 1, the only quarterback that does not hold the claim of bust. Drafted first overall by Jacksonville, Lawrence was dubbed the next big thing all the way back in high school. He was meant to get the Jaguars out of dark times, as prior to drafting Lawrence, the Jags had missed the playoffs 12 of the last 13 seasons. This was supposed to be a match made in heaven. Trevor Lawrence, can't miss generational prospect, and Urban Meyer. Needless to say that the Urban Meyer experiment was a massive failure. Now, with Doug Peterson the following year, Lawrence would make the Pro Bowl as an alternate and even made the NFL Top 100. The Jaguars would go as far as the divisional round, losing to KC by only a touchdown. This past year, everyone expected him to make this huge leap, and it seemed like that was gonna happen, at least in the first half of the season. The Jaguars would suffer a complete collapse in the second half of the season, finishing 9-8 after starting 6-2, and they missed the playoffs completely. While the defense was mostly to blame for this, it appears that Lawrence hasn't been able to live up to the hype of being that once-in-a-generational player, whether fair or unfair. Unfortunately for the rest of the 2021 draft class, he is the only player we talk about this highly. As we move on to the number 2 overall pick, Zach Wilson. Drafted by the Jets with the 2nd overall pick, he was meant to be the centerpiece of a new offense for the Jets. He had a cannon for an arm and had the ability to extend plays while he was in college. To make a long story short, Wilson failed to deliver with gangrene. Whether it was Wilson not being able to adjust to the pros, maybe it was the bright lights of New York City just being too bright, or maybe it was the inexperience at head coach with Robert Saleh, who was taking the reins as first-time head coach. Whatever it was obvious that Wilson's confidence had been shattered. And while the Jets would go on to trade for Rodgers, the Jets weren't ready to give up on Wilson yet. The plan was that he'd sit behind the future Hall of Famer and develop his game to hopefully be ready to take back the reins in a year or 2. That didn't happen. Just like that, Wilson was thrown back in the game. Although he played a little bit better than the previous year, he had very bad stretches to where everyone knew it was over when Tim Boyle replaced him at quarterback. This offseason, Wilson does have a chance to compete for the starting job after being traded to Denver, so there's still a pulse on his career, but he was a failure for the Jets. For all the criticism that Wilson got, he at least got a chance to play. The same cannot be said for the next quarterback taken. At number 3, the 49ers would not only draft Trey Lance, but they would trade up, giving up a lot of capital to draft Trey Lance. Lance had all the tools that every coach looks for in a quarterback. 6'4", big arm, mobile. He was compared to the likes of Josh Allen. But at the end of the day, Lance was a project quarterback. He was only 20 years old when he was drafted. Trey was never meant to start immediately. Trey was to sit in his first year and develop behind Jimmy G. Unfortunately, when he got to take the field, he did not look good. When he played in a game against Seattle very early into the season, he would break his ankle and would end up on IR. To make matters worse, following Jimmy G's inevitable injury, Brock Purdy Mr. Irrelevant would seize the opportunity and become everything that the 49ers hoped Lance would become, guiding the Niners to the championship game and cementing his claim to the starting role this past season. The writing was on the wall for Lance when he couldn't beat out Sam Darnold for the number 2 position, and by the end of the season, Lance would be traded to Big D, where he remains their quarterback 3. Another quarterback wouldn't be taken until the 11th pick, when the Bears would snag Ohio State quarterback Justin Fields. He was electric as a dual threat in both running and passing at Ohio State. So, Chicago would hope that this would translate into the NFL. There were some ups, yes, but there were a lot more downs than ups. He would be very turnover prone and would hang on to the ball way too long. He proved to be an electric runner, but not necessarily in the pass, totaling 9 touchdowns to 10 interceptions and another 12 fumbles with a 2-8 record his rookie year. The following season, Fields and the Bears would finish with the worst record in football, going 3-14 and earning the number 1 overall pick. The Bears would give Fields another chance by trading that number 1 overall pick to Carolina. Additionally, the Bears would get their hands on number 1 wideout DJ Moore. With a true number 1 wide receiver, Fields showed significant improvement. Career highs in completion percentage, passer rating, pass yards, and a career low in interceptions. But Carolina, who traded their first-round pick to acquire the Bears' number 1 pick the previous year, had now become a number 1 overall pick itself. There was a quarterback in this class that had that can't-miss label. A few months later, Chicago would make their decision and, despite his improvement, would move on from Justin Fields, trading him to Pittsburgh and drafting Caleb Williams. And I do just kind of want to point this stuff out for Fields. When you compare how the Bears treated Justin Fields compared to how they're treating Caleb Williams, giving him all these weapons to work with, it is a reminder of how cold-natured the NFL can be. Finally, with the final quarterback in the first round of this draft, the Patriots would select Mac Jones 15th overall. Jones, without a doubt, had the biggest shoes to fill among all these quarterbacks, following the departure of the GOAT, Tom Brady. In his rookie year, he seemed to show promise, guiding the Patriots to the playoffs. All seemed okay in Foxborough, but Mac's play would appear to regress in 2022. It makes sense though. Josh McDaniels, their offensive coordinator, would leave for Vegas, and your new offensive coordinator would be defensive mind coach Matt Patricia. What? Jones regressed in almost every category from his rookie year. The following season, out goes Matt Patricia and in comes Bill O'Brien. Oh boy, oh boy. 2023 felt like an extension of 2022. More benchings, more poor play. The full regression was complete as New England fell to 4-13. They would depart from longtime head coach Bill Belichick, and new head coach Gerard Mayo was gonna clean house. Currently, he is now on the Jacksonville Jaguars roster as a backup to fellow 2021 draftee Trevor Lawrence. Now that we got the first round quarterbacks out the way, I want to bring back the original question. Is this the worst quarterback draft class of all time? Without a doubt, the 2021 quarterback draft class had way more downs than ups. Really, there's only been one up, but some would argue that even he has failed to live up to expectations. And while I didn't talk about them too much, beyond the first round, the only quarterback that has had any significant playing time has been Davis Mills. However, outside of an injury to CJ Stroud, he's more likely going to be a backup from here on out in this league. But is this actually the worst? Crazy enough, I don't think they were. They were bad, yes, but I don't think they're as bad as some of these draft classes that I'm about to mention. The 2010 draft class, headlined by Sam Bradford, wasn't impressive either. The only real standouts other than Bradford, and even then that's debatable, were Tim Tebow for half a season and Colt McCoy. In 2002, all 3 first-round quarterbacks would turn out to be busts in the NFL, that being David Carr, Joey Harrington, and Patrick Ramsey. This class is saved by journeyman Josh McCown and David Garrard, who have had solid, and especially in McCown's case, long careers, albeit they weren't drafted in the first round. 2014 didn't have a good class either, but it was known from the beginning that this wasn't going to be a good class for quarterbacks. This year might have earned a spot for being the worst had it not been for the career renaissance of Geno Smith. Then there's 2007. I could go on and on about what quarterbacks were drafted in this year, but the two that I want to point out are the top two quarterbacks taken in this, and that being Brady Quinn and number 1 overall pick, Jamarcus Russell. I don't think I need to say any more. And finally, don't be surprised if the 2022 class ends up on a conversation like this too. Pickett, the only quarterback taken in the first round, has already been traded, and the rest of the quarterbacks don't look promising either, except for Mr. Irrelevant himself. 2021, had it not been for Trevor Lawrence, may have been labeled as the worst draft class of all time, especially when you consider how quickly every other quarterback in the first round was given up on. But for my money, I believe the worst class is still 2007, when your class has arguably the biggest bust in NFL history, and the best quarterback to come out of this draft class was Matt Moore, who was undrafted. Something went very wrong. 2007 to me is still the worst draft class of all time.